quite a few times to your systems. We'll start off with the left, my far left over here. We got my peoples from the Midwest. These guys are incredible. They work with everybody from Rick Ross to Lil Wayne, Drake, etc. You know their name, man. Clap your hands one time for the Olympics, man. Yes, sir. We got my man, one part of the Soul Council. He's done a lot of major records, people like Lloyd Banks, Cake, as far as the whole, you know, Soul Council team and whatnot. Give it up one time, my man Fatin, y'all. Show some love for Fatin. To his left, producer extraordinaire, he's working with E40, Rihanna, so many big names in the game. Clap it up one time for Willy Will. To his left, man, he's no introduction. You already know what it is. Give it up for Dougie Fresh in the building with us, man. To his left, this dude's got a lot of great records out right now with the homie Yellow Wolf. They were just finished up some new Trump music joints. Get ready to put that out. Give it one time for WillPower, y'all. Show love for WillPower. To his left, the homie just produced a huge record on Kanye's Cruel Summer. That joint, The Morning. Ridiculous, Raekwon, Sci-Hi, Kanye, Pusha, everybody. He's also working with 50, Eminem, Lady Gaga, as well as he just co-executive produced Sky Zoo's new joint, The Dream Deferred, that just dropped a few weeks ago. Clap it up one time for my man llmind, man. To his left is also the DJ for Sky Zoo, but he also has worked on production for him as well. Cooley High, he's an A&R over at Duck Down Records. Clap your hands one time for my homeboy DJ Prince, man. And this guy next to me on the right, he's got a lot of, lately his name is just pretty much on everything. When you get on the blogs and sites, he's working with everybody from Freddie Gibbs, Gucci Man, and Yellow Wolf, and 5 Point Music Group is the team. DJ Burn One is the name. Clap it up for Burn One, man. Show some love. Oh man, there's definitely a lot of records sold on the stage, man. If I had to guess, I would probably say somewhere in the maybe 100 million range. When Just gets here, it might be a little. Might jump up a little bit, but it's definitely a great look. I know I'm honored to be here, you know what I'm saying, and just be able to ask you guys some questions. So, like I said, the panel's all about, you know, what you guys have done, how you guys creatively get your music done. I wanted to start off just by asking a question, and we can all kind of jump in. I want to talk about drums. Everybody, when they talk about producers, when we do the showcase, everybody always talks about the drums and how important they are. Let's talk about the drum process, selection, how important it is to you guys, and how much time you spend on the drums. Anybody kind of just jump right in. We'll talk about anything, about how you get them, find them, make them. Let's do it.
I mean, drums is really the biggest part of music. I mean, for what we do. It's a hip hop conference, so we're trying to bang. I mean, for me, tracking, I don't do a lot of export. I don't do a lot of, you know, stem thingies. I like to track through different EQs and different, you know, I use an API lunchbox right now, so that always gives me a little fatness, you know what I mean? But, you know, I spend just as much time on drums as I do everything. Keys, strings, drums are most important to me, so. But that's some of my tricks. I track, I don't export, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, drums are like my favorite thing to mess with. I think I spend most of my time tweaking my drums, but the one thing that I learned about drums is really 90% of it is your drum selection. You know, like having the right textures, like, you know, you can have a snare, and if you listen to a snare hit, you know, by itself, you can change the perception of how that snare sounds if you couple it with the right hi-hat. And I learned that from Jay Dilla. You know, your kits and the way they intertwine and marry with each other is really important too. And the mixing of it obviously is very important too. You know, having a certain sense of how to make your low end and your bottom, you know, hit, and how to incorporate your drums, you know, with everything else. So, but I think a lot of it has to do with your actual ear for good drum sounds, and I think that's important.
All right, Chloe, want to join that, bro?
For me, one of the things I do, I like to layer my drums, particularly my snares, just to give it a crispness and kind of a bigness. Weak drums will kill, no matter what your sample selection or your musical composition is. If your drums are weak, it's going to kill it. There has to be some kind of knock and drive to the music that you already created. So I know for me, I do, like I said, I do a lot of layering, particularly with my snares. I like to tighten up and change some of the sounds. I'll even truncate some snares, make them a little smaller and tighter. and then put, you know, maybe even a bigger snare under it to kind of layer it on a high, medium, low type kick. But you have to make it uniform to where the 3 or 4 drums that you have start to sound like one unique drum. But you got to have knock with your music.
Okay, cool. Before everybody gets into that, let's give my man Just Blaze up on the stage one time. Clap it up for Just Blaze, y'all. All right, that's what it is, man. So anybody else want to pick up on that as far as the drums? I know you guys, as a team, creatively, how do you guys get involved with the drums? There's got to be some fights going on over there in the studio.
Yeah, it's mad fights. Because, like, you know, somebody might want to do a down south drum kit or, you know, a hip-hop, so we butt heads a lot on that. But, I mean, for us, the most important with drums, I mean, stacking is good, EQing, but, like, I find out that, like, the panning from drums from, like, inward to wide, that makes a huge difference. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes people, like, turn their shit way up to make it knock, you know what I mean? You clipping. So if you mess with the pan a little bit, it'll, like, make a big difference.
Good. What, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for me, I think drum placement is super important. Like, allowing your tracks to breathe, you know, and making sure that the rhythm has its place. You know, so many people at times overcrowd it or do too much rhythmically. So, you know, I think it's really about finding that perfect place for the drums, you know, and once it's EQ'd right and snapping, you know, if it's got that pocket, that makes for a good, you know, good drum situation.
Doug, you want to add on to that, man? Somebody who's made the music with their mouth for their whole life and just rocked so many crowds. How important is the patterning when it comes to the drum sounds and whatnot, just doing it live like that?
To me, like, you hear that sound in the back while we talking, like, I got to feel that in the studio. Now, what's interesting, first I want to say that, you know, I'm honored to be on the panel with such brilliant new producers, and, you know, and I say new because my history goes so far back, y'all, you have no idea. So when I say new, I mean that some of y'all been in the game a long time, but it's an honor to be on the panel with you because as much as I'm able to contribute, I'm more of a student than I am a teacher. I'll share with you the things that I know because I have a tremendous amount of information from my journey. But any real teacher knows that it's important to be a student first in anything you do. So in saying that, I want to share with you how in hip-hop, drums have always been the dominant thing. When you look at hip-hop from its lowest form, meaning the original way that it started, which was going from one record to the other, one of the things that made it serious is that the way the records sound, the texture of the drum, like he was saying, the texture of the drum makes a difference. If the texture of the drum doesn't sound right, no matter how slick your beat is, it doesn't even matter. There's a sound that the ear know the drum's supposed to sound like. Am I correct? And when it doesn't sound correct, you can go crazy trying to figure out why it doesn't sound correct. You'll go through sound after sound after sound. Now, back in the days, we would use what's called the DX drum machine. Any of y'all ever heard of the DX? Then there was another one called the DMX drum machine. That was before DMX the rapper. Then you had the Lindrum. Y'all ever heard of the Lindrum? Then you had the 808, which y'all love. And the 808 used to be tuned down all the way in the back, where the back of the 808 was just like, but the 808 went into the, it became more of a keyboard, low tone vibration that made everybody rock, like back in the days when Run DMC came out with, oh, as we, together forever, and the 808 was the sound. So when you putting together a track, you could put the 808 in there thinking that it's going to sound good, but it could be terrible because if the 808 ain't put in the proper place, it could destroy the whole track. The 808 could just create like nothing but, it'll cover up the beauty of the drum. The drum in hip-hop is the most important part of hip-hop. There is nothing more, in my opinion, more important than the drum. The drum is like your heartbeat. The melody can come and go. If you think about a lot of the original hip-hop records that came out, sucker MCs, just drums. Strictly drums. So when I created the beatbox, I did it based on the tone. Everything that I hear has to be a tone. When I produced any record, the show, anything I did with Rick, with Lottie Dot, any beat, anything you hear is that tone. So if the tone don't sound right to your ear, trust your ear. Your ear knows what it knows. Don't let nobody fool you. Let your ear tell you the truth. The ear know how the tone of the drum's supposed to sound. That's my opinion.
Clap it up for the legendary Dougie Fresh, man. And before we go any further, because I want to have a couple of guys answer that question as well, we got to give it up for one of the new names on the scene, making a lot of noise out here. Get up my homeboy Sonny Digital in the building, man. Clap it up, show some love. And we got another legend back here. Always support anytime anything comes out to the A that revolves around music and production. This guy, his credits are just too long to list, man. Good dude, man. Uncle DJ Toomp, man. Clap it up for DJ Toomp one time. Yeah, man. So real quick, I wanted to pose the question back to Just because he came in a little bit late. We talked about drums and how important they are in the game and how much time people spend on drums. And you've been able to kind of, I guess, base most of your records on your drum selection and the sounds. How much time do you spend on the drums and where do you look for them? How do you make them? Just give them some insight. What you do?
Well, the main thing with drums is, especially when you're dealing with, I think it's whether you're doing it something sample-based or something from scratch, but especially if it's sample-based, your drums have to match the mood of what's happening in the music. A lot of times I'll hear beats from people or tracks from people, and it's like, your sample is cool, or your melody is cool, but the drums don't match the mood of what's happening, or just the sound of what's happening in the rest of the record. And that can really make or break things. Me personally, I try to, I don't necessarily start with the drums first or the music first. It's kind of just all dependent on the track. But I always make sure, or do my best to make sure that the drums snap no matter what. So, like, my process may be, after I find a kick and snare that I feel match, or at least match the basics of what I want to do, I may go and layer on top of that. I may go and add an extra, just a snap or a clap on top of it, not for the sake of actually, for it even sounding like a clap, but just to get something that cuts through a little bit more in the mid-range of that snare, just so it pierces a certain frequency. On top of that, I like to do a lot of shaping. You can get things like, I used to use the hardware version, now I use the software version, like say the SPL Transient Designer, which allows you to actually shape the attack and decay of your sound. So if you have a kick that, say, is cool and the bottom is heavy, but it's not punching enough, instead of sitting there, like, you should always use an EQ as, for me, the EQ should be kind of after the fact. Get the sound right first, and then do your tweaking through the EQs. Don't try to make the drum through equalization. I try to shape it first. So I'll take the Transient Designer, and if the bottom is cool, I'll increase the attack just to get a little bit more punch. If the kick is maybe I like the tone of it, but it's lasting too long, I decrease the decay so that the kick doesn't have such a long decay. And, just do things of that nature with the kick and snare until I get them right, and then go and EQ it just to tweak certain frequencies. Another thing that I think people do too much when they're just kind of starting to figure it out, and we all do this, I did the same thing. When you first learn about compression, or you first get your hands on a compressor, you tend to overcompress everything, especially the drums sometimes. Compression has its place when it comes to drums, but you have to be careful of over-compressing drums because you will end up sucking the life out of them. And what you had that started out as this nice, big, booming drum sound now sounds this thin because you sucked all the life out of it. So you got to be careful not to over-compress as well. And then another thing that I'll do sometimes, another trick that I've been doing for the past couple of years when it comes to drums, I will a lot of times do a submix of my drums and put them on a separate track and place those underneath the actual drum track. Say I have a kick, snare, hi-hat, shaker, rides, whatever my drums are, I'll take those, bounce that down to 2 tracks, and then run it maybe through a guitar amp or some kind of distortion effect just to give it a bit more grit, and then turn it down. I'll usually kill the low end on that track as well, just to get the drums a little bit more grit and get them to snap through a little bit more. I don't always do that, but if I'm going for it, a lot of times people will ask me on certain records, say like Lord Knows, how did I get those drums to sound like that? That's exactly what I did. What you're hearing is 75% of just the live drumming, but then all that is run through 2 distortion pedals, and it's kind of sitting underneath it just to get that give it a little bit more snap and give it a little bit more of a live feel. And from there, it's all about your personal preference and opinion. You know, I don't like to overdo reverbs unless it's necessary for the track. Sometimes I'll add a little bit of a delay, but a spatial delay. Not one that's like right in the front of your face, but just something to give it more atmosphere. Because you think about it, when you're at a show, a lot of times you're going to hear a little bit of a slap back from the sound traveling to the front of the room and then back. So if I'm trying to replicate a live feel, I do that ever so slightly just to give it a little bit more of a live feeling. And, I mean, drums is my favorite thing. I'll talk about this all day, so I'm going to stop there. There you go.
No doubt, no doubt. Let's pass it back to Toomp back there real quick, because Toomp's been doing this for so long and making so many great records. Talk about your creative approach when it comes to drums, Toomp.
Well, I have different devices that I use because I know, especially, I'm still on hardware, honestly. I mean, I still include the software too, Reason, Cubase, and a lot of that stuff. But when I really want some rugged drums, I mean, I can still pull out my SP1200, on the influence some of that Easy Mobi shit, you know what I mean? And ASR still have a crazy sound generator, so I got like a crazy drum library where each key is like so many different drums that I done took off albums and, just break beats. I go through a whole break beat album, just take, okay, kick, snare, it might just be one strike. And I remember something I learned from Teddy Riley about stacking like 3 or 4 different snares. I don't hardly do kicks too tough like that. I mean, with kicks, it may be no more than like 2 layers. But with snares, I've done some stuff like, I've stacked like maybe 4 different snares and really just created something crazy. A lot of times and one reason why I still love the hardware, as far as using like the MP and the SP, because I still like sending my stuff through an analog board and EQing like each, I had each output, and then I track it into Pro Tools like that. And that way, like you were saying, that transient designer, man, it's a lot of cats who don't even know about that. That's incredible, especially for the snares. If you want that pop, it's incredible. So, yeah.
All right, dope. Let's pass over to Sonny real quick. Sonny, being a new dude on the scene, making a lot of great records right now, you have so much to your advantage in terms of where you can go to find sounds these days online and whatnot. Right. What's your approach to it? How do you do all that drum thing, man?
I mean, as far as drums go, like, to me, that's the easy part because that's what, like, a lot of people know me for, and that's what a lot of people like from me. A lot of people know me for, like, the drums and everything from my beats or whatever, but that's, like, the easy part for me. I don't know how I get my drums to sound, how I make them sound. I just know, I just know how to do it. It's just natural, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that's, like, to me, the drums, personally, that's the last thing that I do. You know what I'm saying? The drums is definitely, like, the last thing I do. I start my melody first, then I put my drums on top of it because it's kind of hard for me to go with the drums and then to a melody because I can't really hear the drums as I'm making, like, I can't put like melodies on top of my drums like as I'm making them, you know what I'm saying? But I can put the drums on top of my melodies though. It's easier for me that way, you know what I'm saying? But like with me, like with the drums, it's just something simple for me to do. Like that's what everybody come to me for. Like they want some hard hitting bass or whatever. So I mean that's something simple for me to do. I don't know why, but that's just the easy part for me. But the melodies is like the hard thing for me to pull together. It's like,
All right.
Let me
Everybody
say
got their own
one thing real
process.
quick. I wanted to just add on to that. It has to be it has to come natural to a certain degree. There has to be a certain part of it that you can't explain. I think that's part of the reason why we are all here is because there was something within our brains that is wired differently, where it just comes naturally. So you can't force it. You know what I mean? There has to be a certain amount of a natural gift there to begin with.
And then just to add to what Blaze just said, you got to be one of those dudes that commits. Like, you got to really commit to an idea. Otherwise, you'll sit there and go through 1,000 snares and never make anything. And we're all guilty of that. But, once you hear something and you feel it, your gut instinct tells you to go with that sound, usually it's the right one. So, be an early committer. Yeah.
Can I say one
Sure,
last thing,
absolutely,
please?
absolutely.
One thing that I wanted to say, too, is that sometimes I think when technology improves, we always want to stay up on what's the next thing from a technical standpoint, but sometimes simplicity is the key to success. And sometimes you should work the machine that you have the best relationship with instead of trying to do something with a machine that you have no relationship with. I don't even know how to cut it on sometimes. Right. I was on tour with Prince. His keyboard player said, Dougie, you need to get the Nico, man. I'm telling you, it's crazy. I said, all right, I'll get a Nico. I bought the Nico. The Nico been sitting in the studio since I got the Nico. And the Nico cost like 10 grand. So believe me, simplicity is the key to success. When you hear that record, Milk is Chillin', that was done on a little 4-track in the basement with Daddy-O. That simple, man. Sometimes we make things a little too complicated. Sometimes we start to follow what's going on as a trend. And sometimes your simplicity can be the thing that set the trend. So just remember to not go crazy and do something that's part of where things are going. Not to say you shouldn't try to grow and do new things. I'm just saying sometimes when you have a relationship with a particular machine, you need to do your thing with that machine. That's just my opinion.
Clap it up for the panelists, please, man. A lot of knowledge up here. Also got a big shout out to SAE and Native Instruments and iStandard producers for actually holding down the stage today for the producer panel. So we got a lot more information to get through. Next subject I want to kind of get into is the mix. Because I think the drums and the mix, and that kind of flows into the next conversation we should have. You guys probably do a lot of your own mixing, but you probably have somebody you go to as well, somebody you feel really comfortable with in the studio. How important is the mix-engineer relationship when it comes to really getting that record where it needs to be? And how involved are you guys at that point still? Will just jumped over and got the mic.
For me, the mix is everything. I think that's one of the things that, as far as my own career is concerned, that's what separates me in my work, is the fact that I take a lot of time working on the mix of the record. I'm not an engineer, so I don't fully understand what to do in a mix except turn it until it sounds right, and I built a great relationship with my engineer. So for me, it was about finding a really good engineer that understood what I was trying to get at, and it took close to 6 to 8 months of just working with one guy and them understanding what you like in your drums, what you like in your sounds, how wild you like shit, if you're into effects and shit like that, it's kind of that's what my engineer does for me. So to me, the mix is everything, man. It's what polishes the record in the end, and it helps all the dynamics, and then I took some time out a few years ago, and I built a mastering lab. So we went in and, we researched it, and we found all this great, equipment for mastering, and we realized how much more that did for the mix as well. So to me, that's my thing, man. I'm really into that side of it to make sure that it sounds incredible when it's finally done. So
Well, Anton Knox, go ahead.
Yeah, like you said, the mix is everything, and I'm sure every producer up here would tell you that. One thing that we deal with as a group, is 4 of us, so it's just pandemonium. We've dealt with a lot of engineers, but we usually come out better when we just mix our own records because we know how we want it to sound. And some engineers, they'll try to suggest certain things, and we know how we want it to sound. So, some producers, I encourage them to take both routes. Go try and get a relationship with the engineer and try to do it yourself too. It's not bad. You know what I'm saying? It's just more time. It takes more time, and you learn to be able to explain to an engineer what you want exactly. So yeah, that's everything. The mix is definitely everything.
We're all gonna say the same thing as far as the mix being everything, because it's the shine that really puts it puts the composition in its proper light. For me, I'm not a mix engineer. I don't know all the technicals, but I do have one specific mix engineer that I go to, just because number one, he has a good ear. Number two, he takes good notes and he receives notes well. For me as a producer, I still like to be a part of the mix process because I know how the beat in the song sounds in my head. And it's like, I think everybody up here will tell you, it's one of those things you can't explain, but you know when the mix and everything is right where you had it in your head. That's just how we operate as producers. So for me, it's important that I have an engineer that's patient enough and listens and doesn't think that he too is a producer. Like that brother was saying, trying to tell me how the joints should sound versus taking my notes and understanding my sound, and him too knowing, okay, I know he likes his bottom like this. I know he likes his snares to hit like this. I know he likes the vocals on the joint to be right here in this pocket. What to be warm, what to not be so warm, what to be wet, what to not be so wet. And still allow me, because the producing doesn't stop at the beat making stage. A lot of people have that conception that, once I make the beat and they rap over it, that's it. Nah, you're producing the whole record from start to finish. A lot of times it's the idea all the way to the final mix and master. And you got to know in your mind how all of that is supposed to sound. So you got to have, if you don't mix your own records, you have to have an engineer that you have a good relationship with that knows how you want your records to sound. It's imperative.
Anybody else want to add on to that?
Yeah, real quick. I'll be real quick. We could be here all day talking about mixing, but pretty much everything what these guys said is true. And one thing I could also say is, I think you really had an advantage if you know how to mix your records. Just having basic knowledge of how to engineer and how your stuff should sound, it's just so many advantages. Number one, you don't have to worry about another engineer necessarily fixing anything because your shit already sounds pretty good, so it's less work for your engineer. And also too, engineers could be assholes sometimes. They could be real, no, shout to the engineers, but, they could be real assholes. Moving my snares and shit, I don't want my snare on the grid. Leave it off. I did that on purpose. Stuff like that. But having a good relationship with an engineer is very, very important. And presenting your stuff to an engineer in the best, easiest way possible is also good because you'll save time and money that way. The engineering part is definitely a big part of everything. Yeah.
Cool. Will, do you want to add on to that real quick?
Well, I was going to say, I agree with him, but to a certain extent, I come from an era where producing and engineering were two different things, and it was, for me, engineering, it takes away from the creative process sometimes, clicking, dragging, turning, dragging, clicking. So I think it's real big for every producer to have their own engineer that they don't have to worry, Okay, I know, like you said, engineers want to be producers. They're stealing your sounds. They passing them out. You know what I mean? So you got your own engineer. You can whip it up. You can get the song done, and then you can go on to the next one and know, okay, he's got that engineering thing. You can stay creative. You know what I mean? But mixing can make or break a record. I done seen, like he just said, engineers that change their sounds. We sit in the studio for 10, 12 hours doing all the work, and then they'll just take your snare and turn it into a stick. Or, you know what I mean? So mixing definitely can make or break a song. I've seen engineers turn songs wow, how did you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Moral of the story, I feel just learn as much as you can about engineering, and if you can, mix your own records to the best of your ability. Get it 95% there, and then get it to somebody you trust to just cross the T's and dot the I's. You know, my background is in DJing just as much as it is in engineering, and I've been doing both since I was knee high, and I've been DJing since that, and engineering since 96, 97. So my approach is, here, my record is mixed, just make sure everything's all right. If you hear anything that's wrong, and then give me notes and tweak it and give me your stems back, and I'll just fix that up from there. I mean, I also have the advantage of having had the same 2 or 3 engineers work for me for the past 10 years, so we can keep it very consistent, very tight, and very in-house. But I think the 2 most important things are learn the basics of engineering yourself, learn the technical terms so that you can actually speak to an engineer in a language he understands. Don't just say, I need more bass, or my hi-hat ain't cracking enough. No, be able to tell him what frequency range you want boosted and how much you want it boosted. Learn how to speak decibels, learn how to speak kilohertz, learn how to speak compression rates, learn how to speak about limiting, learn how to speak about proper panning, placement, spatial placement. Learn how to talk that language. Read. There's plenty of books out there. There's one called, I think it's called The Art of Mixing or The Science of Mixing, which has been around for like 15, 20 years. And to my knowledge, it's probably even older than that. But it's a great introduction to understanding the technical terms behind engineering. And the more you can speak that language, it's like if I went to France. If I don't learn how to speak a little bit of French, I'm ass out. So if you try to translate to an engineer what you want your record to sound like and you can't speak audio, you're assed out.
Beautiful. I think that mixing can destroy a masterpiece. You can be in the studio, sometimes the mix that you did in the studio when you was listening to the record is better than the mix that the person did when he mixed the record. And then you're really disappointed. Mixing is kind of like when you're at the end of the ride, you're expecting everything to be perfect or everything to be like you want it to be. And what Judge said is masterful information, because there's a word that I want to share with you. It's called nomenclature. Nomenclature is a word that means a language of a particular system. If somebody's a doctor and they start talking about what you have and they use these technical terms and you don't know, it's because that's the nomenclature of that system. In every science, there's a nomenclature. So in the studio, there's a technical term for so many different things that go on in the studio. And when you don't understand it, it's very difficult to communicate with the person. So coming up in hip-hop, in the very beginning, we didn't know any of those technical terms. We used to just talk to each other and say, well, what studio is the hottest? Somebody may say Chung King got a board that came from overseas. So we would listen to whoever record was mixed at that studio, and if Run DMC record sounded like it was banging, we would all run to that studio because we would think that studio was the place that you get your record mixed like that. Or if it was Green Street, we would go down there and do that. And then what we would do also is try to find that same engineer. But the same engineer don't always mix your record the way they would mix somebody else's record. Because Public Enemy had a completely different sounding record than if you was mixing Slick Rick's record. But we would go to that same studio because we wanted it to sound that same way. And the other thing that's most important is that you're going to make mistakes when you're mixing your record. And that's how you're going to learn how to mix your record. Because that's going to be part of the process of learning how to mix your record. It's going to be a mistake. And then you got to be willing to go back in and remix the song. Because sometimes, I remember when I made the show, we did the record, and after we mixed it, it wasn't like I wanted it to be. We went in there and mixed it again. Then we mixed it again. Then we mixed it again. Until afterwards, we said, yeah, this is the way the record's supposed to sound. So you have to have patience with the record. And like the brother said, the mastering part can destroy your record as well. Because you can mix it, and then the guy puts so much high end in the record, he make it too bright. Or he muffle it and he makes it too dark. And when he makes it too bright or too dark and you play it in the club, it throws you off. Last thing I'm going to say is just recently I was in Japan. When I was in Japan, there was a guy who sent a record. See, what you have on your side now is technology. Because a guy emailed a guy in a party, said, I'm going to send you my record. Tell me how this mix sound in the party. He was in the studio, sent the record to the party. Homeboy played the record at the party, and everybody was saying, and then he said, tell me how they respond. He looked at the crowd, he listened to the song, he said, I think your song need more bass. Sent it back to him while he was finishing mixing the record. That's what technology can do for you now. So you got it all at your hands. Just be patient with the song, and if you know it's supposed to sound a particular way, trust your ear.
Dropping gems today, man. Give it up, give it up, give it up.
In regards to mixing, sometimes you got to go through multiple passes to get it right, and sometimes people get frustrated and they want to just get the record out and put it out. I once saw the box that contained the masters for Michael Jackson's Billie Jean. They mixed that record over 90 times. Literally 90. There's 90 different passes, or over 90 different passes of that record, until we finally got the finished product that we, So patience. It's worth it in the end. For your record to be right.
And before Michael died, before he passed away, will.i.am was working on a song with him, and he was working on a snare, and he was getting the sound. He was trying to get the EQ on a snare for at least 2 to 5 days on the snare. He was driving will.i.am crazy. But he was like, nah, it don't sound right. There's something missing in the snare. So sometimes when your ear knows something, it does make a difference on the success of that song. Trust your ear.
Great. Absolutely. So, Doug, you put it, segue right into the next thing I want to discuss is this whole technology versus chemistry in the studio type of feel with the records that are out these days. A lot of you guys might be sending records out, getting verses, sending them back, mixing them, whatever the case may be. How different is it when you're in the studio with the artist and you have that chemistry versus blasting out an email and getting back a verse? How important is the original chemistry and how different is it?
It's real important. Every producer wants to be able to get in the studio with the artist and actually create, especially something organic, And right now, it's like, if you don't have pull or your name, you don't have rank, it's not going to happen. The most you could probably do is email some tracks to somebody, and they'll play the record, and the record might get cut. Then it may not be the direction you want to go in. It's disabling you as a producer. If you really want to really make a record, not just send some music off and let's just hope something gets recorded. It's bad. It's not how it used to be, where you could just go and get in the studio and just create. You got to have a name. You got to have weight for the artist to trust the producer enough to help him make a record. So, I guess that's like boot camp for producers. You got to go through that. We've sent records off, and we was like, what in the hell? I don't care if it was an artist I like, but he just went left field with it. I wish we could have went in the studio and actually helped them do the record. So, that's every producer's dream, to actually just sit in the studio and vibe out with an artist and make music. Even if it doesn't get on the album, just make the music, So, the digital era, it's a bitch. It's got its pros and cons.
Anybody else want to add on to that? I think that's a pretty important topic to speak on. Go ahead, just grab the mic. Chop it up.
Well, for me, my theory with dealing with artists is I don't separate the vocal from the track. I look at it as one musical composition where the artist is just another instrument that's being produced on the track. So having said that, it takes a pretty good amount of relationship and me trusting your talent and your ear on how to do records for me to just feel comfortable sending you a beat and knowing that it's going to come back, as something crazy. I much prefer to sit in the studio and work with artists, particularly artists that I'm working with for the first time. I know a lot of times just with distance and location, that's not always the case, so you got to do a bunch of back and forth. But it's imperative that if you're going to produce records, you have to produce the record. You can't just make a beat and send it off to a rapper and just be excited that the rapper rapped over your music. You know, if a rapper is not rapping or if a singer is not singing the way that the music dictates, I know from my ear, and I'm sure a lot of other guys, it's almost like you just took a needle and scratched it across the entire beat, no matter how dope the beat is. If a guy is out of the pocket or, you know, he's doing something different than what it is that the music dictated, it's a waste of time. And it's frustrating as a producer. So the best, I mean, for me, I just like to be there, understand each artist's creative process, know how they like to write, know how they, I mean, there's been guys that I've worked with that have told me up front, look, I say a whole lot of extra stuff. I do a lot of uhs and ahs when I rap. We got to take that out. So just knowing that that's a part of the editing process makes it a little bit easier. I wouldn't want to get an email back with a whole bunch of ad-libs on the vocal track. So, you know, technology, I guess like Dougie was saying, it can be a blessing and a curse because a lot of times you'll miss out on some of the rudimentary elements of producing because you can skip some steps from technology. But having that chemistry and being able to actually be in the studio with an artist and produce, that's always going to be the best. That's always going to be the best option for you.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I think that the difference in it is if you're sending records to people, you're not really producing them. You're just sending beats. So there's no chemistry there. There's no production there. You know, I know that it's a part of the business now, and you know, to make money and to make a living, sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get work out. But if you're truly a producer and it really means something to you to be a part of a record, then you have to be in the presence of the person in order to cut the record. And I think throughout history, all of the greatest classic albums were producer and artist-driven projects, like, you know, Aaliyah and Timbaland and Michael Jackson and Quincy and, you know what I'm saying, Just Blaze and Jay-Z. I mean, let's just be real. It's like that's the type of shit that it was what it was because those guys got in and created that music together. So, you know, in a perfect world, you want to be there to do it. I understand you can't all the time, but for me personally, I'll pass on jobs at times to make sure that I can be there to be a part of the process because it could destroy you if it comes out bad, man. You know, we've all had it happen. You send a beat to somebody you like, and then it's on a mixtape. You don't get your money. You don't get no publishing.
That's the next one.
You know, and then you know, not even on the money tip. It's just like what you would do to make a record special. You know, it's been taken out of it. So,
Sonny, want to answer real quick?
I mean, as far as technology go, I mean, you just got used to your advantage. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody can send something through the internet. But, I mean, it's easy for some folks. It's hard for others. I mean, if you got that crack, if you got that shit that everybody wants, it's going to be easy for you to get to who you want to. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just got used to your advantage. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's here. It's for free. You got Twitter. Got more than what they had back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So, you got to just use everything. I don't see. I mean, like I said, if you got that crack, if you got what everybody want, it's going to be easy for you to get to who you need to get it to. You know what I'm saying? But then on the chemistry thing, too, like, me personally, I don't really, like, rappers nowadays, they kind of weird acting to me. Like, they got these egos, you know what I'm saying? Like, they act weird, like, and, you know, like, I ain't got nothing against smoking or drinking or nothing like that, though. But, you know, when you be high and everything and be drunk, it kind of, like, impair whatever you're trying to do. And so, I mean, like, I don't drink or smoke, so it's like we in two different worlds. So it's like it ain't no way we can really vibe, you know what I'm saying? So, like, sometimes, you know, it's better for me just to send beats and just to keep it moving. You know what I'm saying? They send it back to me and let me know what they done. So, you know.
All right. To each their own, right? Real quick, my homie S1 just walked in the building. Clap your hands to S1, man. Symbolic one in the building. He out here. You want to say something? Just get the mic.
Yeah, I was gonna, but then I forgot what it was. But in terms of like creativity, I mean,
you want to wait a minute?
I got it. In terms of creativity and rapport in the studio and chemistry, I mean, all those things are important. What's also important is developing a relationship with an artist. Like you said, like homie said earlier, there's a boot camp phase a lot of times. My boot camp phase, we weren't sending records out. My boot camp phase was, I'm a nobody, but, you know, my name is starting to circulate, so I'm getting in the studio with all these people, but my opinion doesn't really matter yet. So I'm in the studio with all these people, but for the first year or two, there were plenty of times where I'll be in the studio and be like, you know, of course the A&R is always hyping you up, or hyping the artist up to you, like, yo, this guy is the next such and such, he's the next this one, he's the next that one, he's great. And then you get in the studio and you're like, and he gets into the booth, or she gets into the booth, and you're just like, somebody gave you a record deal. Like, this is amazing. But your opinion at the time doesn't matter because you're just some random kid that works in a studio that makes beats. So you just kind of have to eat it. And I ate a lot of those for the first couple of years of my career. And ironically, the first person to just look at me and say, one of the first people to look at me and just say, oh, do whatever you want to do, was Jay-Z. You know, his whole thing was, I'm a rap, and I'm a rap real good. And you better do everything else, all that other good shit around it. You know, like, a lot of times, we got to a point eventually where he trusted me so much, and I kind of had the same relationship with T.I. as well. He's like, yo, I'll rap to some hi-hats and a kick. And you can go back and make the record around that, or, you know, if it got to that point, and then we can collaborate from there. Because sometimes you just have a basic groove. You might not even have an entire track yet, or he might not have an entire rhyme, but he may just like a drum pattern that I have, and he gets inspired by it. And then he'll go back and just throw, you know, it might not even be a whole verse. It might be half a verse, half mumbling with a flow. And then I can go back and do something around that. And things like that are the reason why it is very advantageous to be in a studio together. Because you can build things from scratch, or they might just hear an idea that I had that was nowhere near finished and get inspired by that, and then we can build something from that. In addition to that, going back to relationships, I think in time, as you develop your career and you make great records or classic records or records that sell, you know, a large amount of copies, and just are successful, the best way to put it. Eventually, people will come to respect your opinion. And just to say that just because somebody sent you a record that you might have had to email doesn't always necessarily mean that's the end. You know, like, sometimes you got to bite that bullet and make that call and say, yo, you know, your first verse is cool, your second verse, not so much. Or, you know, just give me your honest opinion. I've had to do that. You know, I had to go through that with one of the biggest records I ever worked on. I won't get into the specifics of it just because I know, you know, people will take what I say and twist it 8 zillion different ways. But, you know, one of the biggest artists I've ever worked with, our first time out, you know, I criticized him on something, and I realized I kind of approached it wrong after the fact. Like, 'cause I gave him a negative, I didn't give him a positive. And that's one thing. If you are a relatively new producer and you're working with, you know, if you have the chance to get in with an established artist or a superstar artist, one of the biggest things, or most valuable things that you can possess in the studio is people skills. Know how to talk, understand the human psychology. You know, that just comes, part of that comes with just life and growing up and whatnot. But when you master that, it's so much easier to communicate with the artists as well. The same way you need to be able to speak to engineers, you need to be able to communicate with artists as human beings. You know, and I realized in this one particular situation, dude went in the booth, did his verse. I let him work. You know, did a whole song, actually, not just the verse, did a whole song. I came back, and it wasn't the direction that I planned, but it still kind of worked. But there were things I didn't like in his second verse in regards to his timing and his subject matter. And I was just like, yeah, you know, that second verse, it was cool, but your flow was a little off, and you kind of deviated from the plan, you know, from the subject matter. And he just looked at me like, you out of your mind? And just turned and gave me the back, put his back to me, and I was just like, I fucked up the money. But then hours later, I got a call back, like, yo, he's on the phone. Like, hey, what's up? Yo, you were right. I was tripping. Nobody's done that to me in my entire career ever. Thank you for that. My respect level for you just went up, you know, 10,000 points. And then afterwards, I was talking to his manager, and she was like, he really respected the fact that you did that, and it was great. But she was like, being that I've known him for so long, I'll tell you where you messed up. You told him that you didn't like something, but you didn't tell him what you did like. And I realized that I got so comfortable, because I only work with a small circle of artists these days. I'm very comfortable with those guys. I can say to Jay-Z, yo, that the last 4 bars wasn't it. You know, and he's not going to look at me crazy, because we've been doing this for over 10 years. You know, same with a lot of other artists I work with. This is my first time out with this guy, and I realized I'd gotten so comfortable in the way I dealt with artists, I forgot that we're all people, and we're not friends like that yet. That situation kind of helped develop a friendship, but you got to learn to give people the positives and negatives when you offer your criticism, and just learn how to deal with people, and that will make situations like when you get that verse back and it's kind of whack, easier to deal with.
It's powerful information now. I just want to share this one little thing with you because I think everybody on the panel kind of tied it up. But one of the things that I think that's happening now in this game is that there's no more honesty. And the lack of honesty is going to make the production suffer. It's going to make the records weak, and it's going to make hip-hop die. So I wanted to be a part of this whole experience because I want to share with you why I see it like that. And hopefully from my conversation, it'll leave a little chip in you that when you do what you do, you remember this piece. The piece is what he just said. Being honest about the music, being honest about the verse, being honest about how you feel when you send somebody a track and they take it and they just rap on it, because I don't consider that producing. I consider that you sold a beat. Because the producer is the guide through the song. He's your coach. He's the guy that tell you what you don't want to hear. And he also compliments you on what he think is great. I just did an event for Georgetown last night called Midnight Madness. I met this guy named Coach Thompson. And he was up there letting these guys, he was at the end of his whole finale, he was letting the guys go up there and dunk and all of that and like show the people what you got. And he was up there and they was doing it, and when it wasn't good, he said, yo, that was whack. He said, you got to do that again. And I was watching him, and I said to myself, I said, this guy really understands what he has to do in order to get his point across, because artists are so artistic that they're coming up with ideas, imagination. Sometimes there's a thin line between what's hot and whack. You may call it whack, but it's really hot because you can't see down the road. I remember when I took the song Lottie Dottie to the studio. How many of y'all remember Profile Records? Y'all remember that label? I'm going to take you back. Profile Records. Run DMC was on it. Now, when I made my records, I paid for them. I went in the studio. I paid for it. There was no label to support me. There was no budget. You know what I mean? I was the guy who did it. And I didn't do it with money from the street because, you know, I wasn't from the street. I basically was just doing shows. I stacked all the money up. I lived in Harlem. You know, my family just wasn't giving me the money because they were thinking I was crazy because hip-hop wasn't popular. It wasn't what you thought was going. It wasn't this. Put it that way. So long story short, I went in there, made a record, called Teddy up because we was going to the same school. Turn around. I used to show Teddy how to do hip-hop because he was in the church at the time. So he had the melody, I had the beat. We went in there and it was the vibe and we was honest with each other. Something wasn't right, we would say it. But what happened is that I made the record and I took it to Profile, and they said, when they heard Rick on the song, they said, yo, this is terrible. This is the worst thing I ever heard. What's this sound this guy's making with his mouth? And what is this guy sounding like? He sounds strange to me rapping. Because if you remember, Run DMC and that whole style was completely different than what we were doing. So what happened is that the record came out. He didn't let it out. We found it independent. We let it out. It became the biggest record in 1985. And the history went on and on and on about it. And the guy came back to me in this club called the Roxy. Y'all heard of the Roxy's?
Yes, sir.
Okay, he came to me in the Roxy's, and the guy apologized to me because he said, man, I didn't know, man. I didn't see it. I couldn't get it. I didn't know it was that. I couldn't see that that record was a record that was about to change something. And that's what happens sometimes. See, you got to have a team of people that work with you that's going to be honest. See, now what he said is true, and this is a jewel here. Truth out of season can be destructive. If you drop truth at the wrong time, you can destroy. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be strategic in the way you deal with truth when you're dealing with artists with egos. Now, an ego works in two different ways, because the artist with the ego, what makes him effective sometimes is that he has an ego. And you like that he has an ego. He's saying all kinds of stuff, and he's convincing you that it's real. But the twist on the ego is when you got to check the ego. And then that's when the person can become emotional, and they take it hard. You see what I'm saying? So, and it's so important that the producer, you must produce these artists. You can't just send them a track. And sometimes you got to put your foot down, like he said. Somebody send the track, you don't like what it sounds like, you got to keep it real. Because you are destroying the quality of hip-hop. You are allowing it to turn into fast food hip-hop. That's why you can hear certain songs from the past and they still hit you. Because there was a relationship between the producer, the artist, the honesty, the studio, the mix. And even when the record ain't mixed right, it's still a hit. Because there's something that's captured in the song. When the song was made in the basement, it wasn't no high technical equipment. It was honesty in the music. So all the producers, sometimes you got to put your foot down. But this is the last thing I'm going to say. I understand when paper's involved. So here's my advice. When you're in demand, you must take command. But when you're not in demand, you got to understand. Remember that.
Dougie Fresh, y'all clap it up one time for my man. Wow. All right, I got to touch on a couple things real quick. First of all, we got two other producers that's walked in the building. I want to shout out my man, Mr. Porter's in the building. Clap your hands one time for Mr. Porter. You know what I mean? I seen him running around the back. Big shout out my man Needles just stepped on the panel as well. Clap your hands for Needles one time. Yeah, man, it's a beautiful event. Clap your hands to everybody at A3C for putting this together. This is just a beautiful thing, especially to put the light on the production world. I think, you know, a lot of times the producer gets forgotten in the process because the average person, I think, just thinks the artist makes the music. It doesn't realize there's actually people behind the scenes creating these, you know, legacies for you to grow up on and be a part of. But I wanted to just throw this in llmind real quick because I think out of a lot of things that just recently happened for you with actually sending a record out to somebody and getting a call from somebody, give them a little piece of how that Cruel Summer record, The Morning, got placed and how that kind of changed things for you a little bit.
All right. I mean, it's kind of a long story. I've been telling the same story in the past.
Minimized version.
So the minimized version, basically, I met Rhymefest a couple years ago, and we just kind of kept in touch and built a rapport with each other. And a lot of people didn't know that. Like, he still has a really good relationship with Kanye, and he's in there writing records with him and everything. So it was real simple, man. Like, they had a bunch of my beats, and they were in the studio. And I got a phone call from Rhymefest, like 9 in the morning, the day after my birthday, which was August 29th this year. And it was literally the day before they handed the Cruel Summer album into mastering. So it was literally, you know, bottom of the ninth, you know, last inning, last minute joint. And he hit me and he was like, yo, I think Kanye wants to use a joint. So that entire day, it was literally a track that I was doing with them over the internet, kind of. So it was like, he would hit me up and be like, all right, we got this idea for this part in this section. You know, can you do this, that, and this? So I would be in there making changes, sending the shit off back to them, and then they would be doing what they were doing, And then they would, Shay and Rhymefest would call me and be like, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And that's pretty much how it happened. And that goes back to, I guess, the technology thing that was one situation where if it wasn't for technology, that would have never happened. Never. So, just my relationship with Rhymefest and Shay Pope kind of curated that happening. And, I remember when he told me, who was on the track and everything. And, the funny part about it is after they cut the record, Kanye had no idea who did the track. He heard it with an unbiased ear, and he did it. And he asked Shay, he was like, yo, who did this track? And Shay was like, yo, llmind. And everybody in the room went nuts. Like, oh shit, llmind did. Like Pusha and everyone. And when Shay told me that, I was like, damn, that's love. So, it made the track extra special knowing that it was actually llmind that did the track. But it wasn't because I was llmind. It was because they actually genuinely felt the track. So, that's just one of those special moments, I guess.
So that's a great combination of technology and chemistry,
technology, chemistry,
all working together.
And also just being a good person, I guess. Like, Rhymefest didn't have to do that for me, and just him, believing in me and knowing that I'm a good dude, and I think that had a lot to do with it too. So
that's what it is, man. All right, man. Last conversation I want to have. Yeah, you can give it up. Give it up for these guys one time. Last combo I want to have, and then we can just kind of take some questions from the audience as well. I just want to talk about the fact about a lot of people in reality don't understand how bad it hurts the producer when a record's leaked. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to like working with a major artist and all of a sudden a record gets leaked, and how that really hurts the economy or the economic stream for that producer in general. So I'm sure you all have stories. Let's get it just a brief. Uh-oh. First one on the mic's usually the most disgruntled.
Yeah.
Talk about it, bro.
All right, man, first and foremost, we are all producers. We don't have, some people may work a second job, whatever, just to get by or whatever. But this is what we do. Once we get a nice, payday to where we're comfortable to work, that's what we do. We don't do anything else. So, to have something leaked, man, that just kills everything. We actually had a record, like, it was actually one of Lil Boosie's last records that him and Jeezy had cut together. We went to the studio, Jeezy played us the record, loved it. Oh, it was amazing. I tell you this, I swear, 15 minutes on the ride back home, it's on the internet. I almost cried. It's real important. It's a lot of records that we had that got leaked. And, a lot of records, from Ross to Sean, everything. And it really hurts you because it's like, damn, there's no chance of this getting on the album, because, or the beat, or the record. So it's like, it's just done. And it's just all in vain sometimes.
Anybody else want to touch on that real quick?
Yeah. I'll be real quick, super quick. One funny experience is, and one thing that a lot of people don't know is, if you're gonna cut a record in the studio, just make sure you check the iTunes fucking folder, because that's where the shit ends up. Like, literally, man, like, there's runners and interns that go into the studio and go into the iTunes folder and scoop everything up, because you could be in the vibe and the engineer might not know any better, and after you cut the record, you might play the MP3 or the WAV on iTunes, double-click it, iTunes opens up and it copies on the hard drive, and it lives there. I remember I went to Nightbird Studios in L.A., Nighthawk, I'm sorry, and I opened up the iTunes folder just to fuck around and see what was in there. There was mad shit in there, and I took all of it, and then I deleted it. There was, some fucking rough version of, an Usher record featuring Kesha, some crazy, and the vocals were mad rough, and I was, I definitely knew that. I definitely didn't, I wasn't supposed to, fucking have access to that. I wasn't supposed to see this, hear this. So it's just a lesson, just look into the iTunes folder, man, because I feel like that's where it happens.
Are you giving somebody advice, or are you telling somebody not to do it?
You giving them tips on how to steal.
Word. Wait, let Sonny finish. I think you had something to say real quick.
See, that's kind of like the downfall of technology now. Like, when you in the industry, and when your record get leaked, that's like the only, every album get leaked now. You know what I'm saying? It's like almost impossible for an album not to get leaked unless it's getting released digital on basically online or iTunes. So, when you in the industry, That's like the worst thing now for your record to get leaked. You know what I'm saying? Just because everybody, like, it's so many geeks out here that, like, little computer nerds who know how to hack into systems and get all type of records. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's a downfall for us, especially like when you get into the industry. Like, that shit really hurt when your record leak. You feel like it's about to do something big, then 5 minutes later it's on the radio. I mean, it's on the internet. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know. That's a downfall about technology to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, anybody can be smart and find that shit and put it out.
It's not as much computer geeks and hacking as you think it is. It's actually a lot of people who just don't know how to operate securely. I mean, for one, you know, people like, we all have a little bit of money, you know, it varies, you know, but we all have a little bit of change. Get your own email server. Anybody who's sending music through Gmail on this panel or through here, like, Gmail is the most easily spoofed, along with Yahoo. Like, why are you sending music through that? You know, like, I'm sure we've all gotten these emails that will say some crazy. I got an email one time, and I was with Chris Brown on a Monday, right? I got an email on Tuesday. Yo, why is Chris Brown talking reckless about you? Click here to see it. And I'm like, So I click it, and it says, oh, you've been logged out of your email. Please log back in. Right? Now, the thing is, it went to a Gmail page because Gmail is the most commonly used. I don't use Gmail. So I got logged out of I figured out what it was. I'm like, oh, they're trying to phish my account, assuming that it's Gmail based or Google Mail based. And it's not. But they just assume they'll at least take that shot. So when I clicked the video link, a Google login screen came up saying, please log back in. And I'm like, oh, all right, I see what this is. Left it alone, closed it, and that was that. But so many people just get hit with that. You know, like, you get phished, you put in your name and your password because you think you got logged out your email. Next thing, and what they do is, from that, they now have your email and your password. They don't do anything crazy. They just go to your email options and the settings, and they just click a link that says, forward any attachments to this email address. So basically, they don't want, you know, your personal life and your family pictures. They just want any MP3 attachments that go to or come out of your mailbox to get forwarded to their email address. And then it ends up getting sold, you know.
It's real shit right there.
That's really how most of it actually happens. It's that, and it's people letting records sit on aside from using, like, if you're going to use your email, fine. Pull it off your server, delete the message after you download the record. A lot of people just let emails pile up on these relatively insecure servers, and once somebody eventually does get access, they have access to everything now. So it's not so much hacking as it is really phishing. And on top of that, like he said, I'll tell you the same story. I was working at Chalice Studios in LA, and I was working on, it doesn't matter what I was working on. I was in the studio, and I was, for whatever reason, I had to use the studio's hard drive for something. And when I went, there's a folder that said sessions. So, of course, I opened the sessions folder. And when I tell you I got at least an album's worth of unreleased Snoop records, an album's worth of Pharrell records that never came out, a ton of Usher records, a bunch of random, not a bunch of it, there was a couple of Wu-Tang records in there. Anybody who had been through Chalice and worked in that room for like 2 or 3 months, I had all of it. And it was all because people were going to the studio, and it wasn't just the MP3s, it was the entire, the actual Pro Tools sessions. So, you know, like, I copied everything. Yeah. But it was really just so I'm a DJ and a record collector at heart. So I'm gonna say I'm at home listening to it. Hell yeah. Would I ever give it to anybody? No. Would I ever?
It's holding them for ransom. That's what it is.
No, it's not even that. Like, you know, I tell them, like, yo, when I last saw Pharrell, I said, yo, that one Snoop record where you was like, zoom, 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 and he's like, how do you know that? So I got it. I would never give it to anybody. You know, that's disrespectful, but I got it. But point being, like, it's even simple things like come to the studio, use your own hard drive. You know, it's very few situations these days where you even need to use the studio's computer in general. Like, you got a laptop, bring your laptop. Have the engineer work off your laptop. My MacBook Pro, Retina display, 16 gigs of RAM, and in a terabyte SSD is more powerful than my Mac Pro. I don't need to use a Mac Pro at this point. You know, like just operate in a self-contained manner.
Real quick, Judge. Big shout out to the homeboy Diamond D that just walked through the building, man. Another legendary producer as well, man. DITC, BX. It's the homie right there, man. You already know. All right, man. You want to add anything more to that?
Yeah, and just, like, in my experience, for me, the worst thing about a leak, I mean, obviously it messes up the money when the record doesn't make the album because it leaked and it sucks. But for me, what hurts even more so is on the creative end. There was an incident last year where, or 2 years ago, the Eminem record that we had done for Recovery that we just never finished got leaked, and it was just a reference. The track was for the most part done. The hook was me singing the hook. I read a lot of my own hooks, and we were just gonna get somebody to sing it afterwards. It was a record called Fly Away. We were trying to choose between having Rihanna sing on Fly Away or Love the Way You Lie. She did Love the Way You Lie, so we had another plan lined up for a movie, possibly, soundtrack for this other song called Fly Away. And, you know, somebody on the inside, we don't need to get into the specifics, they messed up. And they left it in an insecure place. And next thing you know, Eminem has the most, Stan was his record, and I get it now. After working with him, his stands are insane. And next thing you know, I'm getting like a bunch of all types of reactions. You know, like people who hated it, people were asking me why I'm singing on it, why am I trying to sing on an Eminem record? Because they don't understand that it's just a reference. To people who like, this is great, you should be a singer, and I'm like, no, fuck that, I should not be. To radio stations hitting me on Twitter, major radio stations, like, yo, we're banging your new Eminem record right now, and I'm like, it's not even finished. And on top of that, once that happens, he's discouraged, so he no longer wants to bother with our follow-up plans. So it's just creatively it hurt. On the flip side, there's a Jay-Z record called Ignorant Shit, which some of you probably know. Now, that record was the first record we recorded for the Black Album. We did it on a tour bus in my hotel room in Chicago. A lot of times when artists work on things, when they're working on a project, the first couple songs they do might not make the album. So he went from being super hype about it to saying, oh, no, I don't want to do it anymore. The record was already done. It sat, was finished. So there was an intern that used to work at Baseline. Actually, he wasn't even an intern. He was a friend of the original owner of Baseline, who was also a rapper, knew how to work the Pro Tools. Sometimes at night would come in and make his little compilations and pull up, songs. And he had Ignorant Shit on his iPod because he snuck in one night and just made his own CD of it. This dude, this DJ, who I think was Bleak's DJ at the time, saw that he had it on his iPod and was like, yo, Jay just played that on the radio last night. Let me get that. I don't want to bother him for a copy. Just give me yours. Gives it to him. You're a Memphis Bleak's DJ, and you're lying to somebody else in the circle to get a record. Like, you're part of the circle. Anyway, he puts out a mixtape like 2 days later. No, Jay-Z! And then, like, screaming all over it and whatnot. And I'm just like, I'm tripping. Like, yo, this guy can't be serious. Obviously, he was excommunicated shortly after that. But what happened was the record leaked, and people loved it, which is why it eventually ended up on, I think, American Gangster, maybe. We actually went and finished the record because Jay realized, he called me like, yo, I fucked up. I mean, what you mean? He's like, I should have put that record on the Black Album. I'm like, I told you that after you did it. So he went and made sure that he put it out on the next album. And so sometimes, every once in a while, a leaked record. Usher's Yeah was a leak. That was one of Usher's biggest records ever. That was a leak. Lil Jon was like, oh, y'all don't want to? Yeah, check this out. Internet, here we go. Next thing you know, it's #1 record.
Clap your hands, all the producers on the panel one time. All right, so we got to pretty much wrap it up. I just want to say something. Real quick. First of all, give it up for SAE for holding us down on the stage. They're one of the main sponsors. Make sure you check the booth out in the back. Go talk to those guys. They've been sponsoring A3C for the last 4 years. Definitely want to make sure you go check that booth out. Also, big shout out to Native Instruments. Look at the new machine MK2 out right now. Make sure you check out their booth as well. My girl Stoney's over there doing some demos and whatnot. Also, make sure you check us out at iStandardProducers.com. All your news, all your blog stuff, everything you need to know about anything in the production world. We also got that beat camp thing coming up as well on November 2nd through the 4th at SAE and NYC. So, without further ado, we got 15 minutes left, maybe 10 minutes. I just want to take like 2 or 3 quick questions. Don't make them like triple combos. Couple quick questions. Anybody over here want to raise their hand and say a question real quick? Step up. My man just won the battle on Thursday night. This is Sound Mentality. He brought the iStandard Showcase. Clap your hands, my dude. The last track you played if you were here was stupid.
It's an honor to actually be speaking in front of y'all. Just wanted to say that. Much props to y'all. But I'm B. Barber, one half of Sound Mentality. And my question is, with regards to how a producer can brand himself to the masses, you know, to the fans, to artists, to film companies, gaming companies, what would be the best method to do that? And also getting connected with the right people to make sure that happens.
How to get music to record companies?
Basically, he was asking about how do you brand yourself in order to get into that lane in terms of speaking to people and those kind of businesses.
I got one real short answer for that is fuck record companies. My approach these days for people who ask me that question, I always tell them start your own movement, find your own artists that you have good chemistry with, and that think like you and rock like you, and start your own movement wherever you're from. The record labels will eventually have to take notice, make your own success, and then let them come to you. You know, as opposed to the days of like, I mean, it can happen. Don't get me wrong. You know, like you can randomly maybe land a beat on a Jay-Z album or Eminem album or a Kanye album or whoever. But the industry doesn't work like that anymore. You know, for the most part, they take people who have had their own success in their own ways, you know, a lot of times with their own crews or with their own artists, and then they're like, oh, we love the sound you came up with for such and such. We want that sound. I would say just concentrate on building your own thing first and your own artists and your own little empire, and they'll come to you, you know.
And to his point about you asking about branding for like film, television, things of that nature, a large part of that is just relationship. And to piggyback on what Just Blaze said, the industry model that was out, 10, 12, 15 years ago, it's gone now. The dream of the demo tape and the major deal is gone. That's not how stuff gets done. A big portion of it is, coming to events like this, networking, and being sure that you can diversify your sound enough to be attractive to more than just one lane. You know, if you just do a bunch of hip-hop music or whatever the case may be, that's cool. But if you're trying to get into film, television, things of that nature, you're going to have to at least show that you have diversity in your sound and your approach and in your ear, because it's a whole different creative process. So networking and getting in relationship and going to, you know, where that is, like for film and television, got to be in L.A. That's just the bottom line. Make that network, make that connection, and show them that you have what it is that they're looking for, because it's a whole different process. But like Just said, record companies, doesn't even matter.
Yeah, just to tag on to what they just said, man. And your shit is crazy, by the way. You know, really, it's just do it all, man. Like, have your own movement. I think having your own movement is a really, really important part of it. And also, too, just being diverse with your music. You can't, like, you can't try to be diverse. You just have to be diverse. You know, like, you can't say, all right, let me do a little bit of this and electro and let me try dubstep. I mean, it's one thing to experiment on certain things, but, like, it really comes back to what Dougie said. Like, just it all comes from being honest with yourself and being honest with your music. If you're honest with yourself and you just so happen to be a diverse kind of person with different musical tastes, it'll show in the music naturally. And then that will start to open up those, you know, organic doors that you feel like you need to go through. And also, too, you know, as far as the branding thing goes, as a producer, honestly, you got to realize that the reality of it is 99% of your fans are other producers. That's just what it's going to be.
All right, one more quick response. We got to go to the next question. Go ahead. No, you want to say something? Go ahead.
No, he was going to say
something. J-Fat? Okay, go ahead.
Nah, I was going to say, man, just do what you're doing, man. You know, going to these festivals, conventions. You know, the most important thing is getting out networking, you know, traveling. You know, you gotta get out of your home. You know, I mean, the dream of them coming to you, it doesn't always happen. You know what I'm saying? So you got to get out. That's important. You know, studios, get your music out any way you can. But, you know, right in front of them, that's the best way.
I want to share this with you, so you got this. I think that when you're an artist, you have to respect the craft of being an artist. You have to develop your skills. And you have to keep on developing your skills. You can't let your ego get the best of you. You have to continue to stay humble and keep developing your skills. And you have to network with people because there's so many people in this room with so many magnificent talents. And if you share things with them, they may know somebody that can help you. And you may know somebody that can help them. And everybody moves like that. And it's about getting over the fear. Sometimes we have fear to talk to each other. Everybody walks around and they don't want to say nothing to nobody because you're afraid of rejection. You have to get over rejection. You have to say to yourself that, look, you come to a person humble, you talk to them, you share information with them, and you just be an honest person. You be real. And if they treat you in a way that you don't like, then it's nothing to, don't take it personal. You move on. And you can't judge every situation on that one thing that happened. But this is what it's all about, this conference. This is what it's all about. It's about connecting. And the last thing about the label, I tell my sons this because I have them down here. They go by the name of Square Off. They running around. They talking to people. I tell them, just because I'm your father, that doesn't mean nothing. You have to still connect with people because that might help you for the moment. But after people see what you are, who you are, and what you do, that determines how they feel. You see? Because it could work as a double-edged sword. You see what I'm saying? Because people can expect more. So with the labels, there's 360 deals that they're trying to give to people where they want a part of everything that you do. And in some cases, it works. Because if you get enough of an advance, you're happy. But if you don't, then you're running in there and the labels are not making the kind of money that they used to. So they want to eat off of every section of what you eat off of. And you got to decide whether you want to give that up. Or like Just said, do you want to build your brand? So when you go in there, you going in there in a different position. Because, you know, Ice Cube said to me one time, too, when we was talking, he said, look, the best time to make a deal is when you're hot. He said, it ain't about making a deal when you're not hot. Because when you're hot, people going to sit down and listen and negotiate. But when you come in there and you're not as hot, they're going to try to throw you something because you're looking at them as the savior to your career. But technology has changed all that. So you don't have to go to him or to the label. You can build your brand and go to them and sit down and do a deal, own your masters, own your publishing, and you ain't got to do no 360 deal. You see what I'm saying? Back in the days, artists used to give away their masters. Most artists from back in the days don't own their masters. Most of them don't own their publishing. I was fortunate because I paid for everything that I did. So I own my masters. I own my publishing. But that's rare. That's a very rare thing. Now, and I'm just sharing this with you because I think it's important for you to have this information. Your masters and your publishing is what's going to take care of you for the rest of your life. That is when people take you see the movies, they take an old song, they play it, and they got to pay the person who owns the master and pay the person who has the publishing. So why not be in that position right now since technology has set it up that way? And all you got to do is use the label for distribution and publishing. I mean, a distribution and possibly, you know, promotion. So don't think in the mindset of the old school. Think of now. Think of yourself as a label, as a brand. And go in there with confidence and demand what you want. But make yourself hot because they listen differently when you hot.
Clap your hands one time for Dougie Fresh, the whole panel. The Olympics, Fatin, Sonny Digital, Willy, WillPower, llmind, Needles, DJ Burn, one and the homie Just Blaze. We got to clear the stage. We got to get ready for my man, Young Guru, about to set it off with the engineer panel. Clap your hands one time with Young Guru in the building. My man, Mr. Porter, in the building. You know what it is. What's up, bro?
Patch, real quick, don't forget Black tonight.
Absolutely. Don't know what time, man. What time was going down?
10 p.m. tonight. A lot of the guys up here, a lot of legendary producers, Beat Cypher, just going to play beats. That's it. 10 p.m.
Big shout to SAE, iStandard, Native Instruments. Thanks for having us out, y'all. Peace.